Hey there, and welcome to the Crunch Time Performance Show. I'll be your host, Caden Thompson, and today we have our second ever guest on the show. But before I introduce our guest, I want to remind those of you who may not be following the show to follow the show so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. But without further ado, let's introduce today's guest. So, on today's show, we have none other than Bronco alum and current professional baseball player in the Mets organization, Caden Wooster.
How's it going, CT? Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, brother. So a quick intro on Caden. So during his time at Santa Clara, we came in together. We were both in the same 2022 high school grad class and 2026 college grad class. And during the time, Caden was a consistent contributor. He racked up a bunch of innings as a leverage reliever, and then he had some starts mixed in here and there. And after his career, he played 3 years at Santa Clara. He signed with the Mets, and he will be going to Florida in the early spring here to get ready for spring training. And yeah, so just a little bit about him. But with that being said, Woo, I'll jump straight into the first question. It kind of goes right in line with what you have coming up. What are your feelings as you prepare for your first spring training?
I'm super excited. It's a really cool transition to be at this point in my career to know that I'm having an opportunity to prepare to be part of a professional spring training. I've had a couple of opportunities to go down there to Florida and be around camp, be around the complex, and the group of guys they have there is a really fun group to compete against and work with. So I find it to be a super positive environment when I'm down there in Florida, and I'm excited for it. There's definitely some nerves to the whole experience. It's new, it's unfamiliar, but so far I've found the staff, the players, the whole group to be very welcoming, and it's a good place to be.
Absolutely, man. I'm sure it's exciting. The nerves for sure are going to play a part as well, but excitement, a little bit of nervousness, it's all part of it, I think. And I'm really excited for you. That's going to be such a cool thing that you have coming up.
Thank
And
you.
I want to ask another question around that experience. Um, what has the experience been like, as you go down to Florida and you go experience what some of those other professional guys are like and the training environment and the practice environment? What has that transition been like from college baseball to professional baseball?
It's been good. I think that college prepared me really well for it. I think that we had a really good structure at Santa Clara. I was able to refine skills of discipline and time management there, and it's really helped me hit the ground running as I get there in Florida. I think that it's been really cool to see how many different ways there are to become an elite level athlete that so many of the guys that I'm around are. You have so many guys that go about their work in very different ways, yet all of them in one capacity or another have either gotten there with elite talent, elite work ethic, elite performance on the field. And so there's something to pick up and learn from every guy around. It's not the same for every athlete there. There's a lot of people that will spend hours in the gym, hours in the training room doing their prep and post throw every day. And it's a super surgical process to get out there and be healthy and perform at their best every day. But there's also some guys that are able to get away with less, and they know their bodies well enough to know that they don't need quite as much prep or post throw, but a lot of those guys are more dialed in on nutrition or recovery or one thing or another. But there's bits and pieces that I've been able to pick up from all the different guys and what they're able to lean into to make them a successful competitor on and off the field.
Yeah. I mean, knowing your character, I'm sure you walked into that experience, into that room or whatever the training facility is like, and kind of had your eyes open and your ears open and just willing to soak up all that's going on in there. And like you said, taking bits and pieces from as many different guys as you can that you think might benefit your game, because I know
Definitely.
that's kind of how you operate.
It's
But
pretty it's
along
pretty
those,
interesting stepping into that space because you I think as a younger athlete, like towards the end of high school, early in college, I would have thought that you get to that point, if you manage to make it to that point in baseball, you've either found or will be given some magic pill that has all the answers to training and nutrition, recovery, arm care, weightlifting. And I think at some point, the hard truth of sports is that that doesn't exist. And being able to go into a space like that or other high level performance spaces and accepting that these people around me, especially in that environment, I'm surrounded with incredible experience and knowledge of the game. And I truly believe that everything that I need and all the players that are there, everything we need is there. I really feel no need to outsource coaching most of the time. I think that the brain trust of pitching development and strength and conditioning that we have there is truly elite. But you have to do the work day in and day out. And those people are there to support that and be there to answer questions and provide feedback. But a lot of it still falls on you and your ability to consistently execute upon the plans that you're given and to take bits and pieces from different people to make your own plan. So I think that going through college, going through those ups and downs really prepared me to step into a space like that and accept that just because I have a lot of information and answers in front of me doesn't mean it all snaps together without consistency and discipline to work and grow through that experience.
Absolutely, absolutely. You cut out for a second, but I want to emphasize for the listeners that the main point of that is you get into that professional space and there is no magic pill. Like no coach is going to tell you something or give you all the answers to make your experience perfect. Like it requires you to do the work, and I think it also requires you to be consistent in the player that you know you are and ensure that like you are enriching that player to the best of your ability. Does that kind of sums up what you were talking about, Lou?
Absolutely. That's exactly what I was trying to touch on.
Perfect, perfect. I think one thing that I wanted to ask you around those lines are maybe some of the lessons as far as either as it pertains to like mental performance or refining your process, confidence, or anything. Honestly, I wanted to leave it very open to you, but what are some of those things that you have picked up so far from your professional experience?
It's difficult to trim it down into just a couple things. I feel like there's been a plethora of information thrown my way that a lot of different people have had really useful things to contribute to my experience there. But I guess I'll start with the mental performance side. We have a really good team of mental performance coaches that they have us working with on just about a daily basis, and often we're getting a talk from them before our training, after our training, and they have little bits and pieces for us. But the two things that I've really had stick with me during my last visit to camp there was something we got from our coach, Coach Sevi. He was telling us about how you and I learned about this through Brian Kane's stuff at Santa Clara, but the idea of being level-headed through competition, but not just being level-headed and completely denying yourself the emotion and trying to be completely neutral throughout the whole experience, but the ability as an athlete to have composure through the moments of ups and downs during a game, during an inning, or whatever it may be, and having the maturity to understand when that emotion can come out, whether it be positive or negative. I think that a great example of that is you can think of the truly elite athletes of our time. You can think of quarterbacks really easily, a Brady, a Rodgers, a basketball player like Curry or LeBron. And those guys absolutely have their moments of powerful emotion on the court, or the field, but it's not always emotional. They have plenty of moments where they have a bad drive, they had a bad play, and you can't really see it on their face, or a great play, and they continue to work and flow of the game. But in the moments of pause or at the end of the game, end of a quarter, they're able to allow themselves to have that emotion, to be frustrated, to move on from it. But it also allows them to be the best version of themselves in the moments they need to be. So I thought that was a cool way of building off of what we've heard and learned from Kaner before about being not riding the waves of up and down, but also allowing yourself to understand where you sit on that wave in that moment. So that was something that stuck with me from one of our last talks. And then the other thing about mental performance and your training is the idea of being intentional about what you do with yourself. Don't let your not letting your days happen to you and just showing up at the field and stumbling through your work. And you may end up with a good day of work more often than not, but if you're not setting your intentions when you walk into the complex, when you go home to do your work, when you're on an off day and want to do some chores, you kind of allow an element of randomness to play a role in what happens to your day, and you're just not really taking control of your time, of your schedule. And in order to have a more consistent output on a scale, or rather in terms of what you accomplish in the time that you have in a space, being setting your intentions, whether it be writing them down, talking to another coach, another player about them, can be super useful, especially when some of those days feel repetitive and you're going in there and doing the same pre-throw, post-throw program. You're doing your plyos, doing the same conditioning you did 2 days before. Being intentional about how you go about that can really make a difference when you stack those days and weeks. Those are the two things that have really stuck with me recently, being around that circle of baseball.
Dude, that's a lot of really valuable stuff. I have a few thoughts, and the first one being just a quick blurb about your second point. Mastering the mundane. Like that is where the separation happens. I think the best example I know of it is watching Paul Skeens' warm up routine and how it's
Yep.
a 2 hour completely just bland process, and he believes, and I think there's truth to this, that the perfect execution of that process is what makes him great. And, you know, like you said, he could stumble through it and he could kind of just go through the motions and he might do well, but he definitely wouldn't be the guy that he is at this point if he just stumbled through his process day in, day out. And the second point, this one's a little deeper about your first takeaway and emotions. Like Steph Curry and LeBron and those other athletes you mentioned, they are able to use their emotions in a way that serves them. I think they have a really deep awareness of what emotions provide them value. And they, like you said, they don't not experience emotions. They just have enough awareness and discipline to recognize when it is when the time to use those emotions serves them the best, I think.
Yeah.
And I was talking with an athlete the other day, and he said that he was he was kind of going through it with his performance, and the biggest thing he wanted to do was stop caring. And I told him I don't know if that's exactly the way you want to think about it, because the care that you have for your performance in your sport is a double-edged sword. Like yes, it makes it difficult when you're not performing because you care. But on the flip side of it, the reason you're at the point you are and you've seen the success you have is because you care about performing. And so it's a double-edged sword. And I told him, I think that you should be willing to experience the emotions. You just have to recognize that if you're willing to experience the emotions, both the positive and the negative, like that means you're accepting that there's going to be negative moments. And it's not, and you have to be able to be composed enough. I think you mentioned this. You have to be able to be composed enough to not let it consume you in that moment, and have the other skills that are necessary to move past that emotion and get back to the next present moment. And dude, I think those are two like super valuable takeaways that you have so far.
I love the example of Skeens. That was someone that we even talked about during that meeting when I was there, that it doesn't have to look like that. Not every person, you're not doing, your mundane routines aren't wrong if you're not doing 2 hours of prep. Like, that doesn't have to be everybody's mundane routine that they execute to a T. But whatever it is that you choose to be important for you, or a coach deems to be something that would benefit you, you need to commit to that day in and day out. And during that commitment to it, you can reflect upon, all right, I've done, I think of a baseball example. I've done this Yamamoto drill for X amount of time. It doesn't seem to be benefiting my prep, my routines. You can then workshop something else to replace that, some reason why that's not benefiting you. Instead of, if you don't commit to that day in and day out routine and these mundane moments, as you said, then you just start to get frustrated with them and you don't care about them. But it doesn't need to be like black and white, one or the other. Some things will come in and go from your routine, but having a baseline will allow you to always get to a certain point, physically or mentally, before you step onto the field. And that's a super valuable thing to develop, especially as you're working towards having times of year where you're playing 5 or 6 games a week. And it's okay to skip it once, but the bigger problem is building a routine of accepting that you didn't execute something on a consistent basis. That one Tuesday where you skip, it's not what's going to hurt you. It's accepting that it's okay to skip it on Tuesdays, or once a week you can let it go. And that can start to be a significant impact when you extrapolate over a time period of 4 or 5 months, a full season, and then your recovery suddenly isn't what it should be, and your baseline is falling out from under you.
Dude, I love that. I'm reading Atomic Habits, and James Clear talks about that. There's the idea that if you miss one day of whatever your habit is, it's totally fine. But as soon as you miss 2 days in a row, you're now developing a new habit that deems it okay to miss that habit. And so I love the way you talk about that. Like, if you are willing to become accepting of the fact that, okay, on these certain days I'm not going to do it, now you've built a new habit of accepting that you're not going to dominate your process at that time. So I love that, and being aware and being intentional of, look, the reason I have this process in place is because I know it helps me perform at whatever you're doing, and executing that process day in, day out is what's going to take my performance to the level at which I want it to be.
Definitely. What do you think of that book? I've been thinking about picking that up.
Fantastic. I'm actually on the last chapter right now, the conclusion and everything, and I go through a chapter a day and I take a couple notes about it, and I use a lot of it in the work that I do now, and it's fantastic book. I would highly recommend.
Sweet.
I avoided it for so long because I had seen so many people reading it, and I was like, well, I want to be different, like the stubbornness in me was like, I'm sure that there's other stuff out there that I could read, but no, this is a good one, a winner for sure.
I think that he was actually, so the last time I was down in Florida, there were all of the big league, I think they would be best described as like the strategy meetings for the year, what the team will look like, roster will look like. All of those were happening while I was in Florida. And I'm pretty sure he came as a guest speaker for all of those coaches and, offered them some insight into how they can optimize their efforts to better us as athletes. So that's cool that you're reading his book, because I'm pretty sure he was down there in Port St. Lucie with me.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, that's probably super valuable for your organization, and then it trickles down to you, obviously, directly. But one more question, and then I'll let you get on your way. Are there some mental skills, maybe just one or a couple, that you have actively, taken from your playing career in college and are implementing today and still kind of developing and refining?
I mean, the answer is absolutely yes. There's definitely things that I've picked up on that are super useful to me. And the general attitude I try to keep about that stuff is it's a constant process. There's never the thing you learn today and the thing that makes a positive impact on your career and your mentality and all things today is not going to be the same thing as what you may use in a year, 2 years, 10 years. But I think that a couple things that have been super impactful for me over the past 12 months, 18 months, uh, is the idea of dedicating, and we call it, like, within the Mets organization, it's been introduced to me as the 14-24 rule. That's 14 minutes, 24 seconds, 1% of your day. And trying to dedicate that period of time every day to doing something that either grows a baseball skill or off the field skill that I've been interested in. And for me, I've been applying that to research, whether it be, pitching mechanics, pitching development from a standpoint of developing your repertoire, your pitches, the stuff, and understanding how those models work and how I can use them to my advantage. Or, whether it be the school that I was working on this fall and doing a little bit of extra research into my coursework and trying to better understand the stuff that I'm learning. But just the 14-24 doesn't have to be the same thing every day. That hasn't really been something that's stuck for me. Like, I have never been able to consistently sit down and, all right, I'm gonna write these 5 things every day, my 5 gratitudes, or the read 10 pages. I like having a little bit of variability in that, and that's how it had been. That's how I had interpreted it while I was in the Santa Clara program, and it's been talked about in that way since joining the Mets, that it doesn't need to be the same 1% every day. You don't have to make it feel mundane, but you can still, as long as you can consistently execute on it, that you're setting aside that time for some level of self-improvement, has been something that I've really enjoyed. And you can interpret in so many different ways, whether you're someone that is stuck in a very inactive lifestyle, getting outside, going for your 10-minute walk, your 15-minute walk rather, getting some sunlight for 15 minutes on a day that you've been inside feeling gloomy, put the phone down for 15 minutes, go do 15 minutes of arm care. Like, you could really apply it to so many things, but finding that period in your day that is supposed to be for you, for your growth, is a really cool little thing that I feel like I've picked up on. I really enjoy that. And then those 2 things that I mentioned before, that, the mental skills I've learned recently. I think that being able to be more level-headed and stoic in competition and experiencing the emotions of the shortcomings or the successes within it after has been something that I've been trying to apply to my training sessions, because some training sessions are good, some aren't. And if I get all frustrated with myself or get too excited that one pitch looked good, then it will take away from what I was trying to accomplish in that session, in that day. So trying to finish my whole day of training, finish my day of whatever it may be, and then reflecting after on, was I satisfied with that? Did I feel like I executed well, or was I frustrated about something that happened either as a result or part of my process? I think that's been a much more effective way to go about my off-season training.
I love all that. I want to just highlight the 14-24 rule. I think one of the ideas that stuck with me from, I think I got it from a book that I read called Hidden Potential by Adam Grant. And the idea that the work that you're avoiding is where you will see the most growth. And if the goal is to get 1% better a day, right, and we know what that does, like how that compound growth happens, I think anyone can do almost anything that they don't want to do for 14 minutes and 24 seconds a day. Like, you can force yourself to do that. Set the timer on your phone and just go do it. Whether, like you said, whether it's going outside to get a walk, or if it's, you hate doing your arm care, set the timer. 14 minutes and 24 seconds is all it takes for that 1% gain. That's such a, I wrote that down as you were saying it, because that's what I'm going to use in my own everyday life, and as I talk to other athletes. That's a winning formula. I love that.
Definitely. And it doesn't have to just be 1%. If you can you can quantify it as 1% of your day, but if you have, people will do this with studying all the time. Nobody wants to, not nobody, but just about nobody wants to sit down and stare at their physics textbook, their accounting textbook for 4 hours in an evening. But if you can break it up into chunks, it becomes much more manageable. You've got, whether it be manual labor around the house that you need to take care of, or you're training and your body's tired, you're not feeling good, start to break it up into chunks and force yourself to fight through it mentally for that 14-24. Take whatever, if you're really struggling, take whatever rest period you need in between, and fight for a couple percent every day, and that will put us all in a better place.
I love that. Woo, I really appreciate you coming on the show, man. I know, taking time out of your day is not easy when you're getting ready for your spring training and all that and trying to get dialed in, but I appreciate you taking the time, and I think that the listeners got a bunch of good, valuable stuff from this conversation. Are there any other final thoughts that you wanted to leave the viewers with or the listeners with? And if not, no problem.
No final quote, no bomb to drop on the audience today, but I appreciate you having me on. I love what you're working on and doing, and we'll be following along with the podcast to listen to other episodes with guests.
Dude, I appreciate it, man. And that's going to wrap up the show, ladies and gentlemen. So if you enjoyed, please leave a like. And like I said at the beginning, be sure to follow the show if you're not already so you don't miss any of our weekly episodes. But with that being said, that's all I've got. So we'll catch you in the next one.